Hey guys, welcome back into our Python programming series. In the last episode, we kind of touched based on sequencing. So sequencing is the most basic data structure in the Python. If you recall in the previous episode, when we worked with the for loop, we made use of a string. So string is just a type of a sequencing where each element of sequence is assigned a number. Sometimes it's called its position or the index value. And using the position or the index value, you can take out the element out of that sequence. So Python, on the same concept, Python there are 6 built-in types of sequences, but the most common ones are the 4 data types or data structure that we will be working or most commonly used in Python are list, tuple, or some people call tuple, set, and dictionary. There are certain things that you can do with all of these sequence types. That means there are certain operations which are common across all of these data types or structure. Like you can do the indexing, you can do slicing, you can add, you can multiply, you can check for membership of certain items within these data structures or data type. But at the same time, it's very important when choosing or picking a collection type or a data type, because it is very useful to understand the properties of that data type. If you don't really understand the properties of a particular data type, you may end up picking up one thing over the another. So it's really important that you pay close attention to some of these data types and data structure that we will be working in this series. Let's start with the list. A lot of documentation that you find. List is kind of the most versatile data type available in Python, which is simply can be written in the form of a list of comma separated values. Those values are nothing but sometimes called as items also. Between the square brackets, that's the main thing. You write those elements between the square brackets. There are few good things about the list that probably you can remember. That list simply is a collection which is ordered. So that means the elements are ordered and they are changeable. That means let's say you create a list with certain element and there is some value. Later on, if you want to change that value, you can go ahead and do that, and lists do allow that kind of flexibility. At the same time, within a list, when you create a list, you can have some members repeating. That means you could very well have duplicate members within a list. So that's a pretty good thing about the list. So let me go ahead and quickly show you how do you really create a list. Creating a list is very straightforward. So simply, just like you create any variable, let's call list1. We are creating a list and we are calling that name of the list as list1 equal, and as I said, you would have to use the square bracket. So the square brackets kind of indicate, okay, hey, I'm creating a list. So in this case, we just created a list. This is an empty list, means in this list there is no items or there are no values, but this is still a good example or valid example of a list. Let's go ahead and create another list. We call it list2. Within this list, we can go ahead and add some values. The list could contain numbers, it could contain strings, it can contain mix of both. So take an example. Let's go ahead and create a list of some items. So I'll go ahead and call it map. The second item or value in my list is the third element could be very well just a number. So this is also an example of a valid list. In this list, there are 4 elements where 2 elements are string or the type of characters are string, and the 2 elements are of type numbers. So you could very well create this kind of a list. We can have another list. Let's go ahead and create that just contains only the numbers. So you could very well just have the numbers within your list. You can just simply go ahead and create a list with only the string. So let me go ahead and create another list that contains letter A, letter B, C, and D. So all of these are examples of a valid list. So you could create a list that have no members. So it's just an empty list. Later on, you can go ahead and add members to the list. You can have a list that contains only the characters or the string. You can have a list which has only the numbers, or you could have a list that contains both the letters as well as the numbers. There are a few good things about the list as we discussed earlier, because this is a type of a sequence. Using the index value, we could go ahead and very well access the items from the list. And again, using the print function, we can go ahead and print a list. In this example, let's go ahead and use the print and we can pass the name of the list. In this case, let's say I want to print the list 2. So if I go ahead and simply execute this program, it's printing my list on the right hand side of the screen. So it went ahead and printed the list 2, and these are the elements in list 2, as you can see. Similarly, you can can go ahead and call a print on another list if you like. So we'll just do the print on list 4. Go ahead and execute this program. So it's printing your list 2 as well as the list 4. If you want to pick a certain item, you can definitely specify the position or the index of that element, and you can go ahead and get that element. We can also do the slicing and a few other things. So let's go ahead and access an item using the index value. So instead of printing the whole, let me go ahead and say print. We want to print, but this time from the list 4, instead of printing the whole list, we want to get an element out of a specific position or the index. And remember, the index position starts from 0 for the first element, 1, and so on basically. So this is 0, this is 1, this is 2, this is 3. So let's say pick an item from the list 4. I want to print an item from the list 2 at the index position 2. Go ahead and execute this program, and the system went ahead and printed the C. If you recall, this is 0, 1, and 2. At the index position 2, we have the letter C. So by specifying the index position or the position, we can go ahead and fetch or access a specific element. We can also do the slicing. So if you recall the syntax for the slicing, from the list 4, we need to pick a specific item. I want to start from 1 and go all the way to 3. We could very well go ahead and do that. Let me go ahead and execute this one. So we started from position 1, which is B. We went up to the position C 3, not including 3. So we only printed B and C. So using the index position, we can definitely access a particular item. And as I mentioned earlier, the lists do have a property of update. So that means we can go ahead and change an element or a value within the list. So let's take an example, and in this case, I'll go ahead and pick list number 2, and we want to update, let's say, item 2004 with 2017. We can simply go ahead and do that by saying, okay, hey, the list that we are working is the list number 2, and the item's position is 0, 1, and 2. So item at the position number 2, we want to go ahead and change its value from 2008 to 2017. And once you're done, now if I go ahead and print this list 2, so let's do one thing. We'll go ahead and print our list 2 before the change and after the change. So now let's go ahead and re-execute this program. This is our list before the change, where the value is still 2008. We went ahead and did an update on the list by specifying the list name and the index position. We have assigned a new value, and then we printed. So this is pretty easy to update an element or a value of a specific item within the list. There are a few good things about the list that you can do. Let's say if you want to delete a list element, we can always make use of the del keyword. So in this example, let's say we want to delete the position number 2 again. So I can very well go ahead and call a del. Within the del, we can go ahead and specify our list 2, and within the list 2, we can go ahead and specify the position. So in this case, the position number 2. Once the del is done, now let's go ahead and reprint the new updated list. Let's go ahead and run this program. And as you can see, after doing a del of the position number 2, we printed. We don't have any more 2017 as a member into the list. There are a few good things about the list you can do. You can find a length of a list. You can make use of the length function to calculate the list length, and then once that's done, we can go ahead and print the length. If I go ahead and execute this program, it's printing the length of my list 2 is 3, because the length always starts from 1. So 1, 2, and 3. This is the length of my string. We can always concatenate two lists if you like. So we can simply do this, print list 2 plus list 3. So once we go ahead and do that, we are doing a concatenation. So we are just simply concatenating list 2 and list 3 together. Again, we can do a repetition on the list. Let's, for example, I can just simply say, okay, hey, print list 3 repeated 2 times. Now if I go ahead and execute the statement, we just simply went ahead and printed or multiplied the list number 3 twice. So these are some of the things you can do. That again, you can make use of the in keyword to check if something exists. You can do the iteration onto a list. Example, let me just show you the iteration, the for loop that we had discussed. Let's pick the list number 2 in this case, and we want to iterate over this list, and we want to print every element or every item from this list. So we can say simply for x. If you recall, x is our iterating variable. For x in, and after that we can say, okay, hey, in this case I want to use the list 2, and now we have the element stored, first element stored in our list, and now we can go ahead and simply say, hey, I want to print the value of x, print the value of x. Now let's go ahead and I'm going to remove some, let's go ahead and run this program. So you can see we went ahead and picked up an element, each element from our list number 2, and we printed them on each line. So we can loop through. That means we can loop through a list very well. Again, if you just want to see if something is present inside a list, we can always make use of the in keyword. Okay, hey, if this thing is present inside the list, then do something. If it's not, again, you can take some actions on that thing. Again, we discussed about some of the functions that we can apply onto a list. You can use the length function to find out the length of your list. You can use the minimum, you can use the max. These are some of the basic functions that you can do. There are a few more methods or the functions available with the list that you can do. Let's say if you recall that on top of the screen we had created our list one, which was an empty list. That means there was no item into the list. If you want to add an item to the list, you can make use of the append method. So I can just simply say, okay, hey, in my list one, I want to add an element. So I can say append. Within the append, I can go ahead and specify an element. And let's say the element is hello. And after appending, now let's go ahead and print our list one. If I go ahead and do that, you will simply see now in the list one, we have an element hello. Now let's go ahead and repeat the append one more time. I want to show you something. List one dot append. And the next thing, we append an element, and we'll just simply do a print on list one more time. And I'm going to clean up some of these things so we can easily refer. Now let me go ahead and execute the program one more time. If you see, whenever we are now, this is our list one, which has two elements, hello and hi. But if you noticed, when we use the append method is adding a new element or new value, but it's adding that item to the end of the list. That means if you want to add a new item to the end of the list, you could make use of the append method to append that item to the end of the list. But let's say if you want to append or you want to add a new element at a specific position or at a certain index value, then you need to use a different function or different method, and that is called insert. So you would do the same thing, list one, and instead of calling append, we will say insert. So if in the insert, if you take a look, it says the index comma object. So we can specify an index position. An object in this case is an item. So let's go ahead and say insert, and the item I want to add is by, but we want to add this at a specific position or the index. So let's go ahead and specify the index being 1. And once that is added, now let's go ahead and print our list 1 again. Now go ahead and execute the program. And as you can see, this time, instead of appending the element to the end of the list, we were able to add or append or insert the element at a specific index position. And if you want to do that, you need to use the insert function. Similarly, when we use the del to delete an element, we can make use of the another method, which is called remove item. So with the remove item, instead of specifying the index position, you could very well just call out or specify the name of your item or element, and it will go ahead and remove that. So let's take an example. And if you see in the list when we have 3 items, hello, bye, hi. Let's say we want to go ahead and remove bye from our list. So I can just simply say list1 dot remove, and within the remove, we can say, okay, the element we want to do remove is bye. And once that is done, now let's go ahead and print the newly updated list. So we were able to successfully remove the element or value bye from our list 1 using the remove function or the remove method. We do have another method within the list that we can work. It's called the pop method. Again, if you want to remove something at a specific index, we can make use of the pop function. So with the pop function, you just simply go ahead and say, okay, hey, I want to go ahead and pop a certain element. If we don't specify any index with the pop, it's going to go ahead and remove the last element from the list. So to demonstrate that, let's pick our list number 4. So within the list number 4, if I say the list 4 and just do simply a pop, and once that is done, now just simply go ahead and print list 4. So before pop, let me go ahead and clean all of these things again, and we will go ahead and print our list 4 before a pop and after the pop. So now let's go ahead and execute this. So this is our list before pop and after pop. If you see, the element missing is D, because in the pop we had not specified any index position. So if we don't specify an index position, the pop by default removes the last item from your list. If you want to remove a specific item, you can specify the position. So let's say in this case I'm specifying the position number 1, and now let's go ahead and re-execute this program. And as you can see, this is our list which has A, B, C, D as an element, and we are removing an item or the element at position or index 1, which is B. Now our new list is ACD. So that's what you can go ahead and do that. Again, we had seen the del keyword already in the action. If you want to remove all the elements from a list, you can make use of very well the clear method or clear function. So let me go ahead and show you. We can say list4 dot clear, and once that is done, we can go ahead and print the list 4. Now go ahead and execute. This is our list using this print list 4, and then we ran the clear, which went ahead and emptied or removed all the elements from the list, and now we are printing our list 4, which is just an empty list. So there are many more functions or methods out there that you can apply on the list and you can work with. We just took an example of the few. There is a copy, there is a count, there is an extend, index, there is a reverse, there's a shorting of the element, element. So let me go ahead and show you the sorting of the elements. We will go ahead and change certain values. I would just simply go ahead and call it. If I go ahead and print this list number 3, call it on list 3, and let's go ahead and run this. So you can see that it's printing the items 1, 5, 3, 2, 4, but if you want them to be printed into a sorted order, we can always make use of the sort function, and using the sort function we can call rearrange. So simply let's go ahead and do that. So in this case, the list that we are working is list 3, and on list 3 I'm saying, okay, hey, do a sorting on the list 3, and now once that is done, just call the print function, and you would see all the items were sorted and within the list, and now we are printing the list. So that's how you can make use of some of these functions. And then there are many more methods that you can apply or work with the list. That'll be all for this episode. I will see you guys in the next episode. Thank you.